why again do you not have any writing on your coffee mugs? By the way, I put coffee in here to be coffee-like, and I am not sure I can do it. How long has it been off?
Oh, I just turned it off recently because I just put more in here. After my really nice, good coffee that I made at home, my French press coffee, and then I refilled it with this coffee.
Oh, we gotta up the coffee game here.
Yeah, we will. Yesterday, we got on the subject of coffee mugs, and I don't remember how. Oh, Hannah. Hannah has, who's behind the camera always. Wonderful, you'll hear her giggles. Right on cue. Anna giggles. She has a coffee mug that has like, it has this like out, like instead of an indent, like an out dent. It's kind of like, oh man, try not to look, face. And it has like the NBC logo, and
yes,
she was in broadcasting, and so then Allie being Allie with input, post-production, like that word that we learned the other week with her jazz.
But it was like the NBC Peacock. Mm-hmm. So growing up, okay, you probably don't remember this, but growing up it was a true, for me, it was a true peacock that would go like this on the screen for NBC. And then they also did this whole series of like The More You Know. So it was all these little, like, don't do bad things, the more you know, peacock. And so when I saw that, you immediately, and that's what is really amazing about a great brand, is that has shifted and been modernized over the years, but it's still, you still relate to it, you still know it. It's like the peacock. So we were talking about coffee mugs, and Tess mentioned that she does not have any coffee mug except for one that has writing on it.
And I went home and I double checked last night.
So why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm very much like a design aesthetic person, and I think for me, if it is like, so my one that does have writing on it is a phrase that is timeless and will always pertain to my life. And it also is a cool context. Are you pointing to? And it also has a cool shape and kind of a cool design, and it's written in a neat way. And I think for me, I love coffee. I'm such a mug person. We talked about how we're both mug people. We're all mug people, but our mugs look really different. And so mine, only except for one, none of them have writing on it. They only have like designs, and I pick them because of like the design or the color or even the way it's shaped. Like this is shaped kind of funky. And I don't know exactly why that is, but
here's my thought.
Okay, I figured you would.
You are not going to willy-nilly broadcast a quote unless you believe in it.
Yeah.
You are just not going to willy-nilly have something on. You are in it or just drink my coffee out of a design. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that because the one mug that you have is you. Mm-hmm. And it would be a phrase that you would gladly broadcast.
Yeah. Because I know the story behind it. The one mug that I do have says, "It is well with my soul," which is an old hymn. Mm-hmm. And
I can sing it. I sing it in my head, not out loud.
Gosh. But I know the story behind it and who wrote it and why he wrote it. And that has made it so much more powerful for me. So the man, he was alive in the 1800s, and he and his family had moved to America from the UK. And when his family had not moved over with him, they were planning to move. He had been living in Chicago for a while. And he was on his way. He was sailing back to the UK to pick up his family to bring them to America. He had invested in a business. They were going to transplant their family. They were going to migrate to America. And as his family was coming back, their ship sank. And his wife and I think 2 kids and 1 really young baby died. in the ocean. As they were coming, he was going to come meet them, and they passed away. And as he was sailing back, I think he was sailing back to the UK then to spend time with other family or something. About the point where his family passed away, he just started saying, "It was well with my soul." And he would sing, "It is well with my soul." And that is where it came from. That despite his family dying, despite, I think his business burned down, all these tragic things happened. Yeah.
Have you seen most of the graphics around that quote are related to water?
Yeah. Because that's where it was written. There you go. Connectedness. The more you know.
Learn something.
The more you know.
The more you know. Okay, so this is what I absolutely love about this and how easy this is to strength spot. Look at all that context, but also you're sharing that with me with your learner. Your individualization is telling the story about that person. I absolutely love that. So I don't really have a reason why my mugs, well, you know what I do. I like to take memories with me. So whenever I am in a great place, a vacation, or somewhere that I want to remember, I want something that I can hold on to that I bring with me. So I'm not going to willy-nilly have a canvas piece of something up on my wall. It's going to be something that is meaningful to me. So I have a beautiful picture of a sunrise at Grand Lake that I framed, and that's one of my favorite photos in my house. Same thing with my mugs. I am not going to have a willy-nilly patterned. It's beautiful. It is. But I want to look at this and think about California. And I paid attention this morning and realized that I have a whole bunch of California mugs. So my heart kind of belongs there. As in, I left my heart in San Francisco. It's a song. Have you heard that song?
I have.
Tony Bennett?
Yes.
Finally! We are one!
We are one.
Came down to Tony Bennett. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, so...
Hey, we listen to a lot of the same bands.
We do. But I think that kind of resonates with, I want to start my day. I want to think about where I want my energy to go, where I want to
That makes sense.
head towards. And then my morning meditation spot has a photo of the run, basically cliff, near Del Mar, San Diego, which is one of my very, very favorite places to be. So, such a great lead in to what we're going to talk about today, which is, did you want to...
I just wanted to strength spot you for a little bit.
Also, all the great music from Woodstock, that revolution kind of started in California. Haight-Ashbury, that whole piece just really sits here. So I've got some music ones. I've got a lot of the California ones, a lot of Grand Lake ones, like my favorite places, my favorite memories. That's what I want my mugs to be.
Take 2. The clapper. How you doing, Tess? Good. So this is our second take. We did this whole thing and then realized the sound cut out after we talked about mugs. So here we are again. This is good.
We're not just talking about mugs today.
I promise.
Although I do love my California mug because it brings great memories, and now I know Tess loves her mugs. Aesthetic, pleasing. And so
it sounds so sad that I only like mugs because they're aesthetically pleasing. They
That's
have
not sad.
sentimental value.
Why is that sad?
A little
That's
sad.
you.
Yeah, that's me.
Authentically awesome you. And totally related to your strengths. Also, what we're talking about today is values. And how values really shape how we apply our strengths and how we use our strengths. Hopefully what we have to say now is just as wise and witty as it was during the first take. Or maybe even better.
Because we can practice this time, but we don't do that.
So the first activity we wanted to demo is the core values activity that I received from Collective for Youth training. And if you're not familiar with the Collective for Youth organization, they're here in Omaha. They do great trainings. They're low cost, sometimes no cost. And this was an activity that we did as a group. And what you do is, and I will send this out in a PDF, there's a list of values here. So anywhere from decisiveness to speed.
To
Speed is interesting. Optimism, freedom, commitment, challenge, authenticity. What you do is you identify in your first round as many of these and circle them that really resonate with you. So you can circle as many as you want, and you can also add in other words. So I added in grace and humility and love as additional words. You can add in more words, circle as many as apply. And then the next step is to identify 8 of these, only 8, that you feel like, I think earlier I said break it on down, so I'll say it again. You're going to break it on down to 8 that are most meaningful to you, and you'll plug those 8 into a bracket. And I don't want to give away too much. Don't overthink it. Just circle, 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 then identify your 8, plug those into a bracket, and you'll actually identify what your top value is. It was very, very difficult for me. I actually had a little bit of debate, as you can see here, to get to well-being as my core value. And Tess, after I learned about this activity, I came back to the pod and I said, everybody, you need to do this. This is so fun. And what we did is a little bit of assumption making. We made some pretty heavy-duty assumptions as to what we thought other people's values might be. And I think that was one of the great things that we talked about. That's a very, very personal piece. And just because a strength looks like something doesn't mean that it necessarily applies that way to that person. They're so individual. They're so, the word I want to use is intimate. They're very, very close to your heart. Same thing with your values. So what I feel like well-being is for me might be very, very different than what well-being is for other people. And so I'll let Tess talk a little bit about her value bracket, which I totally pegged her number 1. And if you listen to Jen and Millie, it will make total sense to you as well.
So, yes, when we were doing this in the pod, when Allie came back and was like, you need to do this, we, after everyone filled out their brackets, we spent some time kind of guessing what we thought would be people's number 1 or even just make it on their bracket. And I think right away, the first guess was made by Allie about me, and it was like, is Faith your number 1? And yep, that was it. So, I'm pretty guessable.
No.
Predictable.
Open. And again, okay, so we talked about this. Faith, my perception of that word or that value has been further developed because of Tess sharing her strengths, sharing her value and worth in it, and the way that she shares about it, the way that she learns with it, really how all of these honor that value. It's actually even changed my perception of the word, because I came into looking at these personal core values, and when I saw Faith, it meant something different to me. And now you really expanded my awareness of that. So deeply personal, just like our strengths are. Sometimes people will identify their top 5 and immediately think, okay, well, I'm in this role. So for example, I'm a pastor. I don't have belief. I don't have connectedness. I don't have positivity. Why? Am I not in the right field? Am I not in the right calling? And I loved what you shared about how faith and how it applies to your strengths.
Yeah, so the neat thing about values is I think they're such catalyzers and such energizers behind our strengths. Like, our strengths are neutral, and Gallup will tell you that, and it's up to us to apply them positively, negatively, productively, destructively. And so much of these, you can define each of these with 2 sentences, and Gallup does in their short definitions. But what gives them depth and meaning is when you see them in a person, and these strengths combine with your personal values and your life experiences. And so if Allie and I happen to have the same top 5 strengths in the same order, so on paper we would look the same in our top 5, but we wouldn't be the same person because we have different life experiences. We're different generations, clearly, so we grew up in different literally, clearly, not in that way, because it's called Jen and Millie, not because we look like we're oh my gosh, stop. But what also drives it differently is because we have different values. And so Allie's number 1, as she mentioned, is well-being. So her top 5, even if they're the exact same, they're going to look different on the output because she's driven by personal, by professional, by family well-being, to care for the physical, the emotional, the spiritual being that she is. For me, my strengths look different because it's driven by my faith. It's driven by this need to constantly seek more of who God is. And so I don't have belief in my top 5. It's actually my number 18. And when people hear that, they're like, what? And I like to explain to people, you don't have to have belief or connectedness to believe in God or anything like that. For me, belief, you can have belief and not believe in God. You can have belief and be agnostic or be atheist, because the values that drive you matter, and it's what you prioritize, and it's what you give your time and your energy and your effort to. And so for me, my context is driven by faith. It's driven by what I've walked through in my life to understand kind of where God has been at play, and my adaptability to be able to see the space and the time and the people that I have been put, the situation I've been put in now, and where I can, minister to people and love on people right in my current place. My strategic is I'm looking forward to options that are laid before me and whether or not the doors are open or have been closed. And so all of these are driven by my faith. And then when people ask me, why don't you have belief in your top 5? Well, belief is unchanging core values. These have changed. Faith has not always been my number one value in my life, and I've walked a hard road of figuring that out. And integrity has not always been a big value to me. When I was in high school, it was all about who do I need to please and who do I need to look good for. And as I've matured and grown, and as my faith has grown, that has become a cornerstone of my life. And being authentic is,
And the authenticity and learning are in her top 4 bracket. And I think this piece of that says these have evolved. And it's possible for these to evolve. My first thought, as we were talking about belief, I wonder if someone with high belief would do this, if they would do it quicker. Whereas like my input says, oh, what about that word? I got to add another word, and I got to really think about, do I want to be putting this word? We have to be so careful about labels. And we live in a culture of labeling people for their values, labeling people for their strengths, labeling people for their job title, labeling people in so many different dynamics. That makes me crazy, and I think it also makes you crazy. Even though we have totally different strengths, totally different values, totally different generational perspectives, when people get put in categories, we'll have none of it. And that's probably why we're drawn to this great strengths learning, is that we want students to not be put in that, you've got to perform like this, you've got to answer up to this last name or this. Let people be authentic. Let people really develop their core values for who they are. Let them celebrate their strengths for who they are. So this is a great activity. I'm going to send this out in a PDF. The other activity I wanted to share with you today are the values cards.
And this is something that, if you go back to actually the belief blog post, thank you. If you go back to the belief blog post, I talked about these cards a little bit, and I talked about the exercise that I'll model a little bit right now. These cards are available on the Gallup shop for $4, I think. You can get them and have them sent to you. And just like that first page of the values bracket exercise, they're just individual cards that have values and a short definition. Humility is a value. You wrote it in on your bracket exercise. And so basically there are lots and lots of things you can do with these values cards, but one of my favorite exercises is kind of similar to the bracket, but it's more intentional about how your strengths and your values intertwine with each other and work together to help describe you as a whole human being, as a holistic person. And so what you do with these values cards is you go through them one by one, and you sort them into 2 piles, negotiables and non-negotiables. And as you do that, you'll find your non-negotiables your non-negotiables are those values that will always be your values, or are your values in this moment that you wouldn't change a whole lot about them in this context. Your negotiables are ones that, they kind of have influence over my life, but not really. Think of them as driving factors. Would you do something because of this, or do you shape your life around this? And then once you do that, you take your non-negotiable things. So here's my non-negotiable pile. I would go through this and I would think of, I would come up with maybe the 5 top ones. So you don't have to go all the way down to your number 1 like the bracket exercises kind of forces you to do. But you take your top 5, and then what you do is you really take a look at how your strengths interplay with these. So if I take a look at knowledge, for example, I know that was one of my top 5 values that I picked out when I did this exercise. I would take a look and I would say, how do my strengths interplay with this? So how do they drive and motivate this value, but how does this value then also impact my strengths? How do they relate to one another? So for example, when I would talk about this, I would clearly, first off, talk about my learner. Knowledge is defined as facts and lessons learned, understanding or awareness of principles that organize and explain. So I would say, I use my learner in this value to be able to share my knowledge with other people, to say this is what I've learned and I value gaining more knowledge. So I will spend time reading, I will spend time listening to podcasts because I value that. And the same goes for this. So my learner is grown and developed because this is a value in my life, because I value the acquisition of knowledge and the sharing of knowledge. So my learner is just going to continue to grow and continue to be fed in a really positive way. So that's kind of a neat exercise. And as I mentioned in that belief blog, I took a picture of my own notes when I did this exercise. So you'll be able to see with each value, I talked about 2 or 3 of my own strengths that really contributed to that value.
And I'm remembering, this is what happens to me all the time. Did I say that in a previous conversation? Because I'm not sure if I did or not. Now today, I'm like, did I say this at the beginning? So somehow, I don't know if we still captured it when I said we are one, but we are one. We want to give a plug for the blog. If you're not sending that out to your mentors yet, we would really encourage you to do so. Go back to that blog on belief and I'll send you the link directly. But we're doing some great things with Strengths Explorer discussions this summer, and we're looking for some guest bloggers going into the school year because we're going to revisit the Strengths Quest themes and talk about, and we would love to have you talk about your strength in action. So just extending these conversations into a written blog piece. But there's some really good blog posts on there that I think would be really helpful for mentors to kind of think about with Strengths Explorer for sure with their mentee of their 3rd through 8th grade, but also for you to take a deeper dive into your strengths and consider how you might apply them after reading the post. I love how the strength spotting happens in casual conversations, but also through the blog, through the cards, through all kinds of different means and really genres of learning. Want to talk about the wheel?
7 of Jen and Millie.
It feels like a week has gone by since we did this. So a lot's changed since you last saw
Look
us.
at Alex's hair. He looks so beautiful.
And we're back in our
environment.
home place. It's funny how I feel so much more comfortable here.
Yep, so much more comfortable.
We had lunch. We got Whittier as the day passed, I think.
The battery is
Dead.
fully charged. The memory
Oh no, the
has
battery's not
nothing
dead,
on
sorry.
it. Something's wrong with the mic. I haven't figured that out. But we're here and we survived the
And you know
technology
what?
apocalypse of
Her palm
2016.
tree was just swaying in this whole situation, and so
We're here.
of that I am very, very glad to partner with your adaptability and Hannah's positivity,
Yeah.
because Hannah, we can be a big pain for you to have to, "Oh, let's do it again."
So in between our first and second take and now our third take of this, our third segment, I had a strengths session with my church, with the team at my church, and I asked everyone to say an example of a strength they've used in the last 24 hours. So I talked about my adaptability, so I love any strengths out of that. I shared with them my adaptability and this whole conundrum of 3 different takes because of different, totally independent technology issues. So
And the great thing about this triangle of gratitude for strengths is that no one got crabby about it. So thank you for that.
there may
Hannah.
be a dead cat,
Thank you
but
for that.
we don't know for
While
sure.
she was strengths teaching, I got a hair color. So
Win-win.
yeah, and I was strength spotting during that too. big
Yeah,
time.
of course.
Yes.
So the final thing
let's
about
talk
values.
about the wheel. I can't wait to see her post-production of how she puts this together. I bet it'll be awesome.
Okay,
I want to
rolling
say,
back.
Hannah, that
bringing Bob Seger picture in on the last one was one of the best things I've ever
We're
seen.
waiting for you to bring in Tony Bennett.
Tony
obviously.
Bennett.
Tony Bennett.
It just like slides in there. Just
And he
perfection.
definitely had a nice flow, even if it might not have been directly a fro. Just saying, technically speaking. Anyway, we're talking about a wheel.
Little. This is.
This is us in the afternoon versus the morning. Where's our wheel of productivity now?
Also, we did not talk about what Tony Bennett's hair looks like, but we did talk
It's
about Procol Harum, A Wider Shade of Pale, which is a very, very, very well-known song that I believe might be about the Titanic. And I found out today that Tess is an expert on all things Titanic, but she did not know the song Wider Shade of Pale. Even
Not
when
an
I played it, and then I played it louder, and then I said, just wait.
Just wait for the lyrics, and I still have this blank face, and so Allie stares at me and is waiting. And then I
Like
stop
now?
looking at me like that.
So,
Anyway, so yes.
let's talk about the
Anyway.
Wheel of Productivity.
Okay, mine's not called the Wheel of Productivity.
Right.
But
Let's talk about the wheels in our world.
wheels in our world. So the wheel was invented. No. The wheels in our world. So independently, we both did this exercise. And Allie's calls her the wheel. Hers the wheel of productivity. Mine is just like a time mapping wheel. And I did this last night with my church. We're doing a pretty dense sermon series, and so we're doing these additional nights on Wednesday nights to help people who want to come and dissect and dig even deeper into what's talked about on Sundays. And so there was a group of about 20 people last night, I would say, that came to church, and we just kind of talked more in depth about what we talked about on Sunday. And what we're really talking about is an Old Testament passage, and one part of it is how God gives himself a name of Yahweh, which some people have heard, and that distinction in that category kind of made the Christian God set himself apart from all other gods, as those are all other spiritual beings, but I am the supreme. And so the whole point of the message was, do you have other things that you put and make gods in your life, that you value more than you value God? And so part of my internship and part of helping with these nights is to give people handlebars to grasp onto, is how it's illustrated within communication within the church. It's this message, there's a lot of information, a lot of examples, but what is something that people can walk away grasping onto that they can learn about themselves and their lives and about God from the message.
And I
so-
love that concept of handlebars because some of the changes that we've made to new mentor training are those kinds of takeaways. How can we make sure that the learning goes further? And it's sometimes we have so many different ways that we learn. So you can hear things in a sermon, or you can hear things in a training session or a presentation, but a visual will help, or a real life example will help, or a metaphor will help. So I love that handlebar example. We'll be using lots more of that, I think.
Awesome. So what I had people do is I gave them a blank template of a pie chart. And so this one's all filled out, but here's a blank one. So I presented everyone with this. And I asked them to take an account of their whole week. So when you think about your whole week, how do you spend your time? And if I give my specific example of how I spend my time when I took a look at this, I just asked everyone to take an account of their waking hours. So don't count your sleep hours in this, but how do you spend your waking hours? The hours that you have the ability really to control how you allocate that time. And so for me, I found about 7 hours a night. And so it means I have 126 waking hours during the whole week. And so when I wrote down everything I could think of that I do, I spend, my 40 hours in work. I spend about 20 hours on schoolwork, 10 hours in church, 10 hours on entertainment, a few hours outside, and on and on and on. And so I color-coded this just to kind of see really easily how I spend my time in this way. And so the challenge that I really had people walk away from is really that quote that we've talked about on earlier takes, but I don't know if it actually got looped in, is how you spend your time and your money is a direct reflection of your priorities and your values. And that's Dave Shapiro, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that quote. I attribute it to you because you say it all the time. And
I
so
do.
I gave
I
you
do.
credit for it last night when I taught on this.
Awesome.
Really the idea that along with all of these values that we've been talking about throughout the entire day, with our core value chart and these value cards and how values shape our strengths,
this is a really good look at, yes, I can say these are my values, but this is action. This
Right.
is how my values come out in what I do every day. And so for me, and then because of that, they lend into my strengths as well. So I love looking at this because, you know, work is work, and I definitely use my strengths and my values come out in my job. But I love looking at this because I'm in school, and I think this is a really good way to look at. My school it's seminary, so it goes into my faith, my number one on my bracket. It also, learning came up. I also think integrity and authenticity, openness, things like that. One of my values cards is knowledge when I do that exercise, and one of my strengths is learner. I mean, they all blend so well together to say, this is what I'm really good at and what I'm wired to do. This is what drives me and motivates me in my everyday life, and this is how it's applied
Right.
in my hours of my day. And so I love how really inextricably linked your strengths are to your values are to your actions. And to me that leads to authenticity, which clearly is
Right.
a big
What
big
strengths
thing
is
of
all
mine.
about.
Yep.
But that's really the application of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you were to take someone who is like, what's the value in knowing my strengths? I mean, okay, fine, I've got these top 5 or whatever. When you think about it that way, it's taking it and looking at, this is how I uniquely tick, this is what, is going to be my natural self. Then looking at, what do I want to do with my life? What is important to me? What matters to me? And then saying, here's my action. Because I think we all make New Year's resolutions. We all say, oh, I wish I was doing more of this in my life. I wish I was doing more of this. This is a way to really assess it and stop and say, okay, am I honoring my values? Am I honoring my strengths? Am I lending purpose to what I am naturally born to do, but also what I want to accomplish in this great, wonderful trip that we have around the sun? Did you see my new cover photo on Facebook, by the way?
No.
It's Mary Oliver. Tell me, what will you do with this one wild, precious life? I love Mary Oliver. So that's totally, what will you do with your one wild, precious life? And how will you apply it? This is a beautiful example of that. So when Tess shared that with me, I was like, you're kidding me. My first entry into my new kind of journal adventure, which isn't new, it's been going on for about a year. This is a horrible, actually this is an authentic look at how Allison does crafts and artistic ability. I looked at this a little bit differently, and I'll send the link. It's the Wheel of Productivity. I found it on Pinterest, of all places. This is really about how you prioritize your time, and you map out all the hours in a day, and you look at a typical day, and then you color code it. So I chose primary work, other work, commute. I drive a lot, and that's one of the things I want to do is be more intentional with that drive time. I struggle with podcasts. I love my music time, but if I could do a load of laundry while I was driving, my life would be so much better. So commute time, because this is realistically relaxing, exercise, life maintenance, sleep. So sleep is very, very important to me, and I did not find that out until I was a little bit older, how much it really sets the stage for other areas of wellness and well-being for me. So really sketching out that sleep time, and then thinking about my value of well-being that we talked about earlier, this really honors that. Now the question I posed to Tess before our last break was, when you look at something like this, or when you look at this, is there anything that you would want to do differently? Is there anything in your map that you would want to change? And when I look at relaxing is really, really tough for me. I have a hard time doing that, but exercise is actually something that relaxes and really feeds me. So I would give more time to the yellow, and my 6 to 7 p.m. can be any of these different things. And I think being more intentional with this evening time, when I know a lot of that coming into the new year or the new school year will be work. And so learning how to balance that and thinking at the road ahead, okay, how can I make sure that I honor my well-being when I'm looking at this time map now, or I'm looking at this clock, so to speak. So it's amazing the connections that we have when we start talking across the pod from each other. And we talked about the Wheel of Productivity, and we talked about I think initially you called it a chart.
A time map.
It was something chart, because you had it on a little piece of purple paper. And I thought, this is such a great segue into talking about values and talking about strengths. So we will strongly encourage you to take a look at your own wheels. Wow, that sounded so good. Like that could be a song lyric.
We strongly encourage you to look at your own
Take a
wheels.
look at your own wheels.
Take a look at your.
No, we don't. It's way too long in there. There's no
Sorry,
chord that
sorry.
fits into that.
Hannah's already got the rhythm.
I'm like,
Good.
Nope, there's too many syllables.
We strongly encourage. And values are important. And so, despite all of the probably very segmented video things that hopefully Hannah in post-production can seamlessly weave together, values shape our strengths, they shape our time, they shape what we give our energy to and what our purpose is when we go through every day. And one of my favorite quotes, I have no idea where it came from, and I'm not really a quote person, is your life is made up of nows. So how you're spending your time, it's the least controllable, expendable resource that you have. How you spend that is really what you define your life by.
I think it was John Lennon that said life is what happens while you're making plans or while you're busy making plans. And that's what we talked about in the last few times about being present and mindfulness and being in the moment and having those moments of like, yes. When you look at that, you can probably dissect what's a yes. And not all of it is. And it's not always going to be. But this is really, I think, so important right now as we gear up before the school year for all of us. Where are we going with the 2017-2018 school year? You know, where do we want to give our energy? Who is deserving of that energy? What activities are deserving of that energy? And so we'll send this out so that you can give it a try. We would love to hear about how you put together your time map or your wheel of productivity. Also, I think, I may have said this before, but I'll say it again. We are really, really grateful for those of you who let us know that you're watching and give us some feedback. I've had some fun interactions with my friends as a result because I've sent them the link and said, hey, give this a listen. Some have been hilarious, like, you know, knowing that I can't sing. Others have been very, very meaningful and very meaningful to me. So to find those connections personally, professionally, it all really boils down to that energy. So we'll send this out to you so that you can give it a try. We'll also send the link to the values cards. We're going to send a PDF of the bracket so that you can break down your values. We'll send the link to the blog on belief that we talked a little bit about that. And then next time we will be
Debriefing Summit.
We'll be debriefing.
Strength Summit.
We are super excited about the Strength Summit. So we will be debriefing from that. And then we'll see a lot of you at Gallup Strengths Day, which we will do a ton of this kind of stuff so that it gives you some tools to take back and lend purpose and time to utilizing your strengths and utilizing the strengths awareness for your mentors as well.
Awesome. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.